Letters from a Friend at the End of the World by AlexMagnet.
Dear Twilight Sparkle.
Twilight looked up from at the edge of space and saw that there was someone standing at the door.
She could barely see a blue cat perched at the top of a tawny mane through a tiny window near the top of her door. I wonder who that could be. 3 more knocks came, slightly louder than before. "Just a minute," Twilight called. She slipped one of her many bookmarks into the open book and set it aside on the small table. Her horn glowed as she trotted towards the door. With a tiny burst of magic, she opened it. As it swung open, she saw a stallion standing there in the threshold, with a blue cap covering his tousled mane, and matching blue uniform strapped tightly around his chest. The male pony held an envelope in his mouth. Written on the dull white envelope were the words, "Twilight Sparkle of Ponyville." "Can I—" "Yes, Miss Sparkle." His voice was gruff, but it had professional air to it. She blinked a few times, then nodded. "That's me." She pointed to the envelope in his hoofs. "Is that for—" "A letter for you, ma'am." He dropped the letter into his hoof and extended it, offering the envelope to her. A familiar light consumed the letter as it moved to Twilight. It was heavy and bulged slightly at one end. "Thank you," she said, eyeing the letter.
Her brow creased as she examined the envelope.
"That's funny. Usually the princess doesn't send letters by regular mail." She paused. "Wait, this isn't from Princess Celestia?" "Excuse me, do you know who sent this?" she asked. He shook his head, tossing his mane about. "Couldn't say, ma'am. There's no return address on it, but it looks like it's come a long way." Twilight cocked her head to the side. "Flip it over. On the other side, you'll see that it's been stamped by every town it's passed through." The envelope's weight shifted as she flipped it around. He was right. There were a dozen, probably more, stamps on the back. "You don't know anything else about this?" He shook his head, then shrugged. "I just deliver the mail, ma'am." He gave a short nod, spun around with the grace of a mail pony, and then began trotting off.
After he'd gotten a fair distance away, Twilight shut the door and turned her attention back to the envelope.
Twilight turned the letter back over and examined the hoof writing. She didn't recognize it, though admittedly she probably wouldn't even if she knew who it was from. Upon closer inspection, she saw that there were even more stamps than she realized. Ponyville, Emerald Falls, Huffington, Ebonwood, Smoky Mountain, Talltale, Van Hoover. The list went on and on. How many places had this passed through? Despite its travel distance, it seemed no worse for wear. The edges were a little rough, but that was about it. I wonder who sent this. I guess there's only one way to find out. Twilight carefully slit the top of the envelope open with a thin blade of magic. She slid the contents out and tossed the empty shell next to her book. Inside, she found a letter, tri-folded and roughly cut, sapphire trimmed with faux gold. Her name was printed in the violet on the letter fold. She unfolded it. Her eyes automatically moved to the beginning of the letter. It was dated nearly a month and a half ago in delicate cursive. She definitely didn't recognize this hoof writing. August 13th, year 1001. Dear Twilight Sparkle, it has been a few weeks since I sent my last letter. I've been a little busy lately. Sorry about that. I'm getting closer, though. I can feel it in the air, and I can see it in the wildlife. It's become increasingly cold since I reached the Crystal Mountains, and it's only gotten worse since I passed them. You'd think that once you'd reached the point where even the saliva starts to freeze in the moment it leaves your mouth, that it couldn't possibly get any colder. But it does. Believe me, it does, and it continues to do so. I really hate the cold. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but it's true. I hate this stupid cold. Why did this thing have to make its home so far north? Why couldn't it have just lived in a tropical island or something? I swear, this wind will make the death of me. Oh well, at least I'll make a nice ice sculpture. Maybe then ponies would come and see the great and frozen Trixie. That would be a sight to see. Did I mention that I hate this cold? I think I complain too much. Anyway, you're probably wondering why my brooch is in this envelope. Then again, maybe you aren't. Either way, there's 2 reasons for that. 1, the darn thing keeps falling off, so that's really annoying. Ever since my run-in with that timber wolf, that one that ripped my cloak in half, I've never been able to keep it on straight. I know I had to get rid of it after it fell off and I tripped over it. You'll see once you put it on. It's deceptively heavy. Anyway, it's not worth very much, so instead of selling it, I decided to send it to you. I've had it for so many years that I can't imagine just throwing it away. I'm hoping that you can keep it for me, so that when I get back and take it to your friend, one whose mane I turned green, to get it put on a new cloak. If I remember right, she was the one that made that beautiful dress out of my stage curtains. I'm sure she can do something about this cloak, too. It's beginning to look a little lived in. Of course, I'll pay her for her time and all that. Now where was I? Oh, right. Reason 2. And 2, I want you to have it. At least until I get back, that is. I can't think of any pony I'd rather have taken care of it. It may not be worth much, but it means a lot to me, and it'll be in good hooves with you. Plus, if you ever need somebody to talk to, it's a good listen. I know that probably doesn't make much sense, but that's okay. Just make sure you keep it with you, okay? I wanted to write more, but it looks like the caravan is moving out again. I'll write again soon. Sincerely, Trixie Lulamoon. Mouth agape, Twilight stared at the letter, unable to formulate any coherent thoughts. She quickly reread it, then read it a third time and a fourth time. What in the wide, wide world of Equestria is going on here? It was like someone had loaded a shotgun with questions and fired it at her brain. Trixie? But why? Why would Trixie be writing me? And why'd she give me her brooch? What's she doing so far north? What's she looking for up there? And why is she... Twilight's thoughts were interrupted by a loud thud at the sensation of being flung across the room. By the time she'd regained her composure, she found herself lying on her back 10 feet further from the door than she had been. She tried to stand, but found herself pinned by a soft, heavy something. What the... Sorry, Twi. Didn't see you there. The weight lifted off her chest as Rainbow Dash flapped her wings. She hovered in midair with a silly grin on her face and a hoof running through her rainbow mane. Sorry about that. Oh, let me help you, she said as she saw Twilight struggling to stand up. After she had been helped to her hooves, Twilight brushed herself off and gave Rainbow a reproachable glance. I guess knocking would be too much to ask. Rainbow Dash floated lightly to the ground like a feather, in a stark contrast to her entrance just moments before. It kind of looked like the door was already open from far away. It wasn't. I didn't think I was going that fast. You were. Plus, I kind of thought I would have plenty of time to slow down, but you were in the way. Twilight rolled her eyes. I didn't mean to get in the way of your flying. Rainbow shrugged. How was I supposed to know where you'd be? Twilight opened her mouth to respond, but thought it'd be better if she said, I assume there was a reason for your visit? Her eyes lit up like she'd just remembered to answer a test. Oh, I almost forgot! She began searching around frantically, scanning the shelves and countertops. I heard you got the new Daring Do book. She lifted into the air and began flying up and around the line of books. A.G. told me, she said, answering Twilight's unasked question. Oh? Twilight cocked her head to the side. Is that all? Rainbow stopped and fired a wide-eyed glare at Twilight. Is that all? Do you even hear yourself? This is Daring Do we're talking about. The coolest and most awesome pony of all time. She threw her hooves in the air. Daring Do, Twilight. Daring Do. Twilight couldn't contain herself and burst out laughing, much to the chagrin of Rainbow Dash. After a moment, she calmed herself down. Wiping a tear away, she said, I'm sorry, Rainbow Dash. I just didn't think I would ever see the day when you got so excited over a book. This isn't just any book, Twi. This is... Yes, Twilight said, waving a dismissive hoof. This is Daring Do we're talking about. She allowed herself another chuckle before continuing. Anyway, AJ was right. I was in Camelot a few days ago, and I bought it while I was there. She walked over to one of the neatly organized shelves, adorning the walls of the Ponyville library. She mumbled quietly to herself. She ran her hoof across the spines of the books. Ah! Here we go. Sweet, Rainbow cried as Twilight levited the books into her hooves. She tugged it to her chest tightly. Oh, man, this is going to be so awesome! Twilight smiled warmly. I've already finished it. You're welcome to borrow it. Awesome! Thanks, Twi. I'm gonna... She stopped suddenly as something caught her eye. She was staring at the far end of the room where she had crashed into Twilight. The brooch, overturned next to the letter Trixie had sent, had sparkled for the briefest of moments and grabbed Rainbow's attention. Ignoring Twilight's confused looks, she glided over to it. What's this? She asked. What's what? Rainbow leaned down to look more closely at the letter, and the letter lay on its back, with the words inside clearly visible, and she began to make out the words. Rainbow's eyes shot open. She backed away and said, Oh, I just remembered. I've got weather duty right now. But what about... See you later, Twi! Without stopping for as much as a second, she shoved Daring Do and the search for the Mythagra into her saddlebag and rocketed out the front door and into the sky. Twilight shook her head. Well, that was weird. She saw that the brooch and letter was still laying on the ground. Oh, almost forgot about you. The two objects were surrounded by a purple light as Twilight lifted them and brought them to herself. Where was I? She tapped her hoof to her forehead. This definitely isn't the first letter she sent me. But why is it the first one I've gotten? Who's sending you letters? Asked Spike. He stood in the threshold of the doorway, an envelope in his scaly hands. Twilight's eyes shot open to the letter in Spike's grip. Oh, and speaking of letters, the mail pony guy said he forgot to give you this. He waved the envelope in his hands. By the way, was that Rainbow Dash just now? Ignoring him, Twilight's eyes widened, snatching the letter away from him in a flash of lavender light. She stared like it had just gotten the new issue of Astrology Quarterly. Spike tapped his foot impatiently. Want to fill me in, Twilight? She paid him no mind and continued to examine the letter. With careful incision, she sliced open the top of the envelope and emptied the contents into a small magic field. Spike cleared his throat loudly. Twilight snapped out of the trance and looked up at him. She blushed slightly, not looking up from the letter. Oh, sorry, Spike. I need to read this first. I need to figure out what the hay is going on. She delicately opened the letter, unfolding it and flattening the crease out as gently as she could. Dear Twilight Sparkle, I'm getting close now. At least, I think I am. The others tell me it's not far now. I don't know. It seems like we still have a long way to go. I haven't seen this town everyone is talking about yet. Frostvale, I think it's called. Well, either way, my journey is almost at an end. It's taking me almost a year, but I'm finally about to reach at the end of the world. I can't wait to be back. It feels like forever since I've seen anything but snow and ice. I'm looking forward to the green hills and sunny pastures of Ponyville. It's kind of funny that I'm talking about Ponyville like it's my home. I've only ever been there that one time. Maybe it's just this cold making me long for warmer places. Maybe it's because I've been writing you so much. I don't know. Anyway, I can't wait to be back. I hope you've kept all my letters. I want to read them again. I'm sure we will both get a nice laugh at all the ridiculous things I said before. Isn't it funny how things can change in a year? I never thought we would be friends, for one. Speaking of that, is it weird that I think of us as friends? I've been writing you for almost a year now, and even though the conversation's been decidedly one-sided, I think of you as my friend. Maybe it's just a side effect of writing to the same pony over and over for a year straight. Do you think of me as your friend? I suppose it doesn't matter what you think of me. I'll always consider you my friend, as weird as that may or may not be. Well, I just wanted to give you a quick update on my progress and all that. I should be done here in the next few days, assuming all goes well, and then I'll wait on my way back. I guess it'll be all I think about for 3 weeks or so before I'm back in Ponyville. Who knows? If I'm fast enough and lucky enough, maybe I'll beat this letter back. I'm sure you're probably worried about me. I'll be fine, though. I am the great and powerful Trixie, after all. What was it I said? The greatest equine who has ever lived? That sounds something like I would have said. Hope to see you soon. Your friend, Trixie Lulamoon. Once she had finished reading, Twilight placed the letter to the side. Her eyes moved to the brooch. It bobbed slightly in the magic bezel, caressed by a magenta glow. She plucked it from its stasis and examined it closely. It was cut as haphazardly, giving the finished appearance from far away, but a rough one when looked at in more detail. The gold trim was scratched, and the sapphire on the inside wasn't much better off. The scuffs and scrapes and crisscrossed the gem and dulled its sheen. Without proper equipment, it was nearly impossible to tell its age, but it certainly looked old. Even harder was trying to figure out how long ago it had been set into the brooch. However old it was, Trixie was probably not its first owner. Well? Spike asked, waiting patiently for a few minutes. Sorry, Spike, Twilight replied. I'm just having a hard time deciding what to make of all this. She shook her head. I mean, what the hell am I supposed to think when a letter from a pony I only met once shows up out of the blue? He raised an eyebrow. In response, she floated the pair of letters into his claws, answering the question before he'd even asked it. They're from Trixie. Spike opened his mouth. I don't know either, Spike. I'm trying to figure that out. She cut him off. Go ahead, read them. Maybe you can make some sense out of all this. Wordlessly, Spike unfolded the first letter. He read it slowly, and when he finished, his eyebrow raised a little higher, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he just read the next letter. The silence passed as Twilight watched him read. Finally, when he had finished, he said, I don't even know where to begin. Twilight laughed. You're telling me. Suddenly I start getting letters from Trixie saying that she's looking for Something north of the Crystal Mountains? And that she's giving me her brooch? Yeah, Spike said as he ran a claw of his head. And it seems like these aren't the first letters she sent you. I know, Spike. That's what I was wondering about, too. It doesn't make sense. He put one claw to his hip and the other to his chin, with the thumb and forefinger forming a V shape. I'm pretty sure the only letters you've gotten are from Princess Celestia. And I should know, he patted his stomach. Those things aren't always pleasant to deliver. Twilight shook her head and shrugged. I know. I don't know what to make of all of this. Violet light washed over the room like a wave as she levitated the letters, brooch, and Spike into the air, placing the letters and brooch in her bag and Spike on her back. I think we need to go to the post office and try to figure out where the rest of those letters are. As he wrapped his arms around Twilight's neck, Spike said, Maybe that dude has the other letters, too. She sighed softly. I hope so, Spike. I really do.